Take your time, take your time.
Will you share these with us?
Yeah, I can share the slides. I just coordinate with the guys, yeah. Now, we're going to talk about every single one of these boxes. All right? Cool? Yes. No. I'm kidding. We're going to talk about this part right here. Right? We need 3 days to go through the whole thing. But what I want to talk about is this part that you see circled in orange. You're going to see that this is our secret sauce. And this is something that I want you, at the end of this, to walk away appreciating that you need to do this too. If there's one thing that I can leave you with, it's that this bit that we're going to get into is the one thing that you should walk away from after this talk and implement in your business. The secret has to do with Oreo. So, all right, everyone close your eyes, because this is embarrassing. I want you to close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. Raise your hand if you've bought Oreos in the last 6 months. Okay, all right. You can keep your eyes open. It's embarrassing to admit that you've bought this. Now, if you've bought Oreos in the last 6 months, these are the Oreos I grew up with as a kid, right? Mom says, you know, want a snack, want a treat this week? Yeah, Mom, I want Oreos. Okay, this is what you're getting. Go to the grocery store today and buy Oreos. This is what you get. You can't even fucking find this one. I mean, it's every possible Oreo except for this one. It's this. And it gets worse. There's this. Swedish fish flavored Oreo. How did they come up with that one? There's someone in this room right now who has kids who put shit together and say, hey mom, look at this. And one of these parents works for Oreo and says, that's a good idea. But this is the secret right here. And it's not just Oreo. You look at virtually every product, every consumer product under the sun, what was once one product 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 25 years ago, is now a collection of segmented products. These are segments within segments. 30 years ago, when ESPN became a new network, it was the sports network. How many ESPNs are there today? I don't even know what they do, right? There's like ESPN, the cricket station. It's like cricket 24/7. I mean, they have a million. So there's segments within segments. We are living in a segmented world. And if you are building or have built a marketing funnel that has one-size-fits-all messaging, you are going to go the way of the dinosaur. My mission in life is to rid the world of one-size-fits-all marketing. What you're going to see here is an example of how a small business, like all of us in this room presumably, can use a form of segmentation to massively grow your business. This is a landing page. Okay? This is a landing page. This is our control landing page, the one that was the best performing landing page in our campaign to generate over 60,000 opt-ins, 60,000 email subscribers in 5 days. Now, what's interesting about this is after you click on this button, what do you naturally expect? What would you expect to see?
Pop-up form.
I've got free shit that I'm not taking back to my house. So, who wants it?
Email.
Email? All right. One here. So this is why you're going to sit at the front. If you're way back there, I mean, you know, my shot's not that good. I can try to frisbee toss it back there. All right. So you'd expect an email opt-in form, right? Instead, this is what we do. We ask a question. We ask a question. I'm going to explain the reason why we do this. So we ask a question, and then we take people to an email opt-in step. Okay? Now, the reason why we do this is we want to know one thing. We want to identify what bucket someone falls into. Because based on that one piece of information, it's going to set off a cascade of events that are targeted to that person. So I'm going to figure out, is this a, geez, what the hell is this shit? I mean, golden original mini type buyer, or is this a white fudge covered Oreo? Like, what type of buyer am I working with, right? So by asking just one simple question, then you can customize, tailor everything that they're going to see thereafter. Now, what's interesting about this is not only does this help you identify their bucket, we're going to talk through the key things that you want to focus on optimizing and customizing and what you want to completely ignore. But there's another piece to this that's just as interesting, and that's this. So, what piece of software are we looking at right now? What is this? VWO. Who said that? The back? All right. VWO. What is VWO?
It's a visual website optimizer so that you could do A/B tests.
Great. Awesome. So everyone catch that? Anyone not know what VWO is? It's okay. Like, raise your hand if you're confused. Okay. Great. So Visual Website Optimizer is a piece of software that allows you to run A/B split tests. Anyone not know what an A/B split test? So we do two different things. We want to see, does this perform better than that? It allows you to run these split tests and visualize the whole visual part, which is performing better. So in this case, this test that you're looking at right here, it's a little bit tough to see, is a test where we tested a two-step opt-in form, so asking the question, then the email step, versus one that goes straight to email, right? Now, how would you expect them to perform? You're asking for an additional piece of information. Would you expect that to perform at a lower conversion rate or a higher conversion rate? So asking the question, who thinks lower?
Lower.
Who thinks higher? Okay, higher, you're the smart people. All right, smart people over here. Not smart people here, no, I'm kidding. It's actually higher. So what you see here, this one additional question here, is what you see in orange. We actually increase the opt-in rate by asking the question beforehand. So wait, I can have my cake and eat it too? I can figure out what bucket someone's in and then get them to opt in at a higher rate than had I not asked that question? Well, how is that? Why does that work? Yes! Micro commitments. That deserves a book. Like I said, I'm not taking this home. So there's so many of these fucking things at home. Micro commitments, right? So micro commitments basically is a fancy way of describing when you ask someone to take a tiny little step on your website. You're asking them to make some sort of commitment. Okay? Now the reason why, the psychological reason, so my background, I studied neuroscience at Brown, so my background is in neuroscience, and that's how I came into this whole world of marketing, is from that background. So I have a deep interest and fascination around the human brain. Now in college, I spent a lot of time studying the psychology of fear. And what's interesting is that there is a mechanism that we have in our brains, all of us, when we're asked to do anything, our natural reaction is to do what? Flee or fight or flee, right? It's the fight or flight response. Our natural reaction, whenever we're asked to make any sort of commitment or any sort of change, our natural reaction is resistance, right? And what's interesting is that even when this change is a positive thing, even when it's good for you, your brain resists it. And that's why so many of us struggle with success, right? We get to this point and it's like we're held back, we're holding ourselves back, we do stupid things to sabotage our success. So there's a natural survival mechanism that's at play. And the interesting thing about this is there is a hack. And this is a hack that you can use in any area of your life, not just on your website, but in any area of your life. And it has to do with hacking that fight or flight response. Now the way you hack that response is by, whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling resistant to change, where you feel like the step that you're trying to make is too big, you just ask yourself a simple question. And this is straight from Dr. Robert Maurer. Anyone familiar with Dr. Robert Maurer's work? Yep. In Kaizen. You ask yourself a simple question. It's a super easy hack. What is the next step that I could take that is literally so small, it's impossible to fail? So you ask yourself this question. Whenever you find yourself resistant to any sort of change, and you can apply the same framework or lens to your website. When you're asking someone to do something on your site, what is the step that you can ask them to take that's literally so small it's impossible to fail? And again, this is a hack that you can use on yourself as well. So a good example of this is, say you're sitting down to, raise your hand if you do any sort of writing online. Any blog posts or anything like that? Raise your hand if you ever have writer's block. Awesome. Okay, so here's the hack. You sit down at your computer and you think, all right, what the hell am I going to write about, right? The hack is this. You literally just, with one finger, you type one key. Boom. It's literally, it's an impossible to fail step. Like, everyone, we could raise our hand and say, yeah, I can do that, right? It's, the impossible to fail step needs to be so small that you laugh at it. Like you think this is ridiculous, this is stupid, this is foolish. So you apply that same framework to your website, right? And when you do that, what ends up happening is a step that was once threatening, asking for someone's email address, all of a sudden becomes so small that it's non-threatening. And you're doing the same thing that you do yourself when you say, all right, I can type one key, type the letter T on the word the. I mean, fuck, I can type the word the. I can type a nonsense sentence, the dog jumped over the fence. And if I can do that, I can type another nonsense sentence and just type, and I can just type nonsense until I start making sense, and before you know it, you're writing an article, right? That's what we're doing here. We're building action-taking momentum. So this hack of micro-commitments is something that every single one of us can use. Does this make sense? Raise your hand if you have an opt-in step in your website in some place. Raise your hand if you think you can ask a single question before that opt-in step to increase your opt-in rate. Yeah? Awesome. Okay, good. It's even better. So, we identify the most important thing, and we're going to get into how to identify this, is to base everything around your buckets. Who would like to know how you figure out what your buckets are? Yeah? So buckets, this is the most important thing, but I want to give you an example of, in this particular funnel, the one that we broke down, the 3 things that we customized based on a person's bucket. Because you saw, let me go fast enough, you saw this here. Can you imagine if you had a funnel like this, and you had 5 different buckets, and you had 5 versions of this, what that would look like? I mean, that's like insane, right? The cool thing is, there's only 3 things you need to customize. And that's what I'm going to show you what to do. All right. The first thing that you customize, and this is the most important thing, after you identify what bucket someone's in, so what category, what segment they fall into, the single most important thing to customize is the very first piece of content. The very first piece of content. So whenever they see immediately after they opt into your website, if you have 5 buckets, you want to show 5 different versions of that thing. Now, you can do this at a very basic level, just change the headline on your piece of content and have the same exact piece of content. Or in our case, what we do is we actually have a custom video. So this is a 5 to 7 minute video that's different based on one of 4 buckets that someone falls into. The 4 buckets, in our case, just to provide a little context, are business owners who haven't yet chosen their market, business owners who have chosen their market but don't have an email list and want to grow their email list, business owners that have a list and an established business but they want to scale from 6 to 7 figures, and the 4th bucket is marketing professionals, consultants, copywriters who work with businesses to build funnels. So those are our 4 buckets. I'll explain how we figured out what those buckets are and how you can use the same process. But you can see here, this headline, haven't chosen your market yet, getting started, watch this video now. Stuck with a small email list, want to grow your list fast, watch this video now. These are 2 different videos that I obviously filmed on the same day. I'm wearing the same shirt. And the content is radically different. There's some commonality to it though. So one of the things that I've done is I've set the frame in this initial piece of content that everything that they see going forward, I ask them, I say, everything that I'm about to show you, ask yourself how this applies to you based on your situation right now as someone who is looking to grow your email list or looking to scale your business. So what that does is by customizing this first piece of content, they have their radar up. They're looking at every other piece of content in the funnel through the lens of how is this customized and true to me. I'm not promising that it's customized, but I'm alerting them to the fact that it will be relevant to them. So we customize this the first piece of content. There's a custom email as well. Second thing, in this offer, I'm a big fan of, in any funnel, using success stories, testimonials. Raise your hand if you use testimonials on your website, right? Now, if people come to your website, if I came to your website, do I want to hear about a 65-year-old grandmother who has 17 grandkids and like 13 cats? Do I want to learn about that person and how that person was affected by your product? No! I want to learn about someone like me, right? Well, your market is the same. So if you look at this here, what we do is by asking the question, we're able to identify a person's situation, and then we identify the case study that's most relevant to them. So instead of just showing someone a generic testimonial, we highlight our absolute best testimonial or case study for that particular bucket. So that you can see here. So Ron is on the left, who built an email list from nothing to 18,000 email subscribers per month. And then you've got Will on the right, who grew his business from 6 to 7 figures. Right? So if I just put this case study to everyone, the problem is people are going to see that and they're saying, I'm not like Will. Like, I'm just starting my business. I don't have a 6-figure business. How is this relevant to me? Similarly, if I were to put Ron's success story in front of everybody, I've got the 7-figure business owners who are saying, why do I give a crap about someone who grew an email list from nothing to 18,000 emails? That means nothing. So by doing this, you're able to make your case studies hyper-specific.
Is that still your first video?
No, this is later in the funnel.
Got it.
This is later in the funnel. So first video, in your funnel, when you introduce these elements, which ones you should focus on customizing, and which ones you can afford to just be generic for all of your segments. And then the last one is this one here. So what we do, and this is going to bridge into the identifying your buckets. So what we do, and what I urge you to do as well, is when you're identifying your buckets, you want to identify what is the single biggest thing that bucket is, that holds that particular bucket back from buying your product. What is that bucket's specific objection, right? What is the thing that your product is lacking that they need help with? And then that becomes your bonus for that product, for that particular bucket. So I'll give you an example. So on the left-hand side is bucket, in our case, number 2. People who are looking to grow their email list. So they want to buy our course, but their big objection is, but wait, I don't have an email list. So for them, we give them a bonus, a training program on how to grow your email list. Okay? Compare that to, on the right, for this particular bucket number 3, or bucket C for us, business owners who want to go from 6 to 7 figures. For them, the bonus is how to scale your business from 6 to 7 figures. Now, if I mention both of those bonuses to all buckets, I'm going to be alienating a huge percentage of our market, right? Because it's irrelevant. Someone that doesn't have an email list, they're going to say, they're actually going to be repelled by your offer. Because they're going to say, wait, scaling to 7 figures, that has no relevance to where I am right now in my business. So what you do is you identify the biggest pain point that your product doesn't solve for each market, and you find a way to create a bonus that fills that gap. Does that make sense? Anyone confused about that? Raise your hand. Cool. Now, the most important thing with all of this is, like most things in life, the answers are easy. It's the questions that are difficult. It's identifying the right buckets. Because in every market, there are what are called profit pools. Profit pools are small segments within any market that represent a disproportionate amount of profit that exists in that market. Every market is different. You want to identify what the profit pools are in your business, in your vertical, in your space, and ignore all the rest of the market. And in many cases, it might mean targeting 7% of your market and ignoring 93%. So I want to give you a very high level how to identify what your buckets are, and then I'm going to turn it over to Q&A, and whatever time we have left, we'll focus on that. Okay. 5 steps. Very simple. Number 1, conduct a discovery survey. A discovery survey is all about learning about your market. It's a deep dive survey, if you will. Number 2, in your discovery survey, you want to come up with what we call your SMIQ, which is your single most important question. And there's a simple framework for this. When it comes to X, what's your single biggest challenge? And X is the thing that your product solves. Okay? So when it comes to growing your email list, what's your single biggest challenge? When it comes to getting more traffic to your website, what's your single biggest challenge? When it comes to removing the cellulite on the back of your thighs, what's your single biggest challenge? When it comes to getting your dog to stop peeing on the rug, what's your single biggest challenge? Okay? Now once you do that, you analyze the open-ended response. This is specifically an open-ended question. And you want to analyze the open-ended responses and focus on what we call hyper-responsives. Hyper-responsives are people who leave you the longest, most detailed, most passionate answers, and they represent the top 20% of your market. So we talked about those profit pools. You want to ignore the bottom 80%. Does that make sense? So you ask an open-ended question, you run a simple calculation, which responses are longest. You can use a simple length calculation in an Excel spreadsheet. Ignore the bottom 80%, focus on the hypers, and then you go to work. You start looking at those open-ended responses and you start categorizing them in different buckets. You identify your top 3 to 5 buckets. This is important. If you try to identify 17 buckets, remember that funnel flow chart that we saw at the beginning? It's going to be out of control. So the metric that I'm always aiming for is capture 80% of your market in 3 to 5 buckets. So I'll give you an example. In every market, there's always going to be outliers. You're always going to have people in a market that don't fall into a bucket. They're unusual, and they're just the long tail outliers. So like in one of our businesses, we have a business in the memory improvement space. We have a series of courses that teach people memory techniques. And in that market, we have a few core buckets that we focus on. There's actually 3 of them. But there's one that we selectively ignore, and it's people with TBI. Everyone know what TBI? Traumatic brain injury. So these are people that have a medical situation that's impacted their memory. That's not someone that we serve. Like if you have TBI, you got to go to a doctor. Like you need to work with a neurologist. But it represents a sizable amount of people in our audience. We ignore that group of people. Even though they're passionate, even though they are indicative of being buyers, we ignore them. So you identify your top 3 to 5 buckets and try to capture 80% of your market. And then what you do is you just customize the 3, in this case, needle moving points of your funnel, which are the first piece of content. Well, I'll just turn it to you guys. 3 needle moving points are number 1, first piece of content. Number 2, testimonials. Number 3, your bonus. That's it. Segment on the front end, customize those 3 pieces of content, and here are the results. So this is a perfect example of one of our funnels doing about $65,000 a month. Before adding this segmentation, this customization, taking it to over $125,000 afterward. Here, another funnel doing about 4,000 leads per day. Before segmentation, after segmentation, we're doing over 14,000 email subscribers per day in a single funnel. Another example here, record-setting day, 50,000 leads, 1,250 sales. That's on Facebook cold traffic. We do that daily. This is our record at the time. Another example here, you can see we did almost $9 million in revenue on a single segmentation funnel. Another example here, if you're saying, but wait, these are big numbers, I'm just getting started, 0 to 6 figures in 11 months using a simple segmentation funnel. And if you're saying, but wait, those examples must be from ages ago, I get so many of these. I pulled one from within the last day. Brian, after implementing single segmentation and the feedback Brian gave, new quiz funnel generates $7,000 USD in revenue in 5 days. The most exciting part is my sales page is converting at below 5% before. But in this campaign, the new sales page created based on each of the 5 buckets is converting at a whopping 15% with the same traffic. That is a 3 to 5x increase in conversion just on what you saw right there. And if you're wondering, does this shit last? This is one of my AdWords accounts. Look at the dates. 2008, I can update this. 2016. That line here does not move. 8 years, I have not touched this funnel. 8 years, set it up once, and it has produced, in this case, $10,000 a month in profit after expenses, just straight into my bank account, like clockwork, month after month after month. You set this up and you do it right. Not only does it work, but it lasts. So I want you to go through this process right now. I want you to think about, right now, how old you are. Think about your age. And I want you to think about how old you're going to be 8 years from now. And if you've got kids, Think about how old your kids are right now. Mine are 2 and 4. I want you to think about how old your kids are going to be in 8 years. You put that into perspective. Imagine having something that funds your lifestyle, puts money in your bank account like that for the next 8 years. You bust your ass building it right when you get home after this conference, and it just produces for you for the next decade. That being said, next steps. If you want to go deeper into this stuff, I've got a free blueprint that walks through everything we just talked about. You can get it, go to askmethod.com. No money at all, you just get it. It's a really cool 15-page PDF that we have that walks through the whole process. If you want to spend a little bit of money and you want to actually learn something in the process, you can get a copy of our book for free. Just pay $4.95 shipping and handling. You'll actually go through a segmentation funnel yourself. So you can, for $4.95, you can actually experience what it's like going through that type of customization and learning the process from the perspective of a consumer. That's all I got. Questions? Anyone know how we're doing on time? What's the time? How much time we have?
Right.
Perfect. All right. I saw a hand go up in the back, and then we'll go here, and then in the front. Let's do this. Let's see if we can shout. I don't want to have to run back and forth.
How many funnels do you have set up?
Gosh, we're in 23 different markets. Most markets it's a single high-performing funnel, but we have some markets we have 6 or 7 funnels. So in the tennis space, for example, we have a serve killers funnel, a doubles killers funnel, a mental game killers funnel. We have a forehand backhand funnel. We have a funnel for after funnel.
Hope you guys enjoyed this.
That's